Before history, before the first words were carved into clay, before even the wheel was imagined, there was a hill. Not a city, not a kingdom, not a temple as we know it today. Just a hill. A nameless rise in the endless plains of what is now southern Turkey. Beneath its dusty surface, the earth hid a secret that would whisper across time and one day awaken, calling to those who sought to understand how humanity first dreamed of the divine. For countless generations, the hill was overlooked. Nomads grazed their flocks along its slopes. Winds blew, dust settled, and the seasons passed. And yet, beneath that quiet earth, a monument slept. A monument older than we could imagine. It was the year 1994 when the silence broke. A shepherd named Mehmet Yildiz noticed something strange among the loose stones. A carved shape, smooth and deliberate, half buried in the soil. It did not belong there. Soon, archaeologists arrived. With trowels, brushes, and careful hands, they began to uncover pillars rising from the ground like ancient sentinels. The carvings upon them, foxes, snakes, vultures, boars, depicted creatures from a world long vanished, etched with a sophistication that seemed impossible for the era. The site was named Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill. But this hill was anything but ordinary. It was older than any known city, older than writing, older than agriculture as history records it. The builders were supposedly hunter-gatherers, people who wandered the land, following herds, gathering roots, with no cities, no kings, no temples. And yet, here they had built stone circles, massive T-shaped pillars, weighing up to 20 tons each, carved with precision, aligned with purpose, a cathedral older than civilization itself. Imagine standing here 12,000 years ago. The plain stretches endlessly beneath a sky unspoiled by fire or smoke. The stars shine in a clarity lost to us today. And here, in this emptiness, your people begin to carve stone. They carve foxes and lions. They carve snakes and vultures. They arrange massive pillars in perfect circles. They lift, they drag, they toil, not for food, not for shelter, not for trade. They build for something greater, for something we will only later call meaning. Some pillars bear abstract symbols, others the silhouette of arms, raised in ways that hint at ritual or perhaps prayer. The air would have been filled with smoke from fires and the sound of chanting, voices carried across the plain by night winds, echoing off limestone, rising to meet the stars. And then silence. For thousands of years, no one walked this hill. No one recorded its wonders. No one remembered why it was built. Until our modern eyes, dusty, impatient, seeking knowledge, finally found it again. Göbekli Tepe forces a question upon us. How much did we really know about our ancestors? We think of the first humans as wanderers, small and simple. And yet, these people, these unknown builders, created monuments of astonishing complexity. They had no metal, no wheel, no written language. And still, they reached across time, leaving behind a message carved in stone. Tonight, as you listen, let yourself drift into the silence of that ancient plain. Picture the torchlight flickering against massive stone pillars. The shadows dance across carvings of creatures that have long vanished. Feel the hands that built these circles, the minds that imagined them, the hearts that dare to hope for something eternal. Long before kingdoms and empires, long before pyramids and palaces, there were humans who dreamed and who carved those dreams into stone. The first humans who built Göbekli Tepe were more than hunters. They were dreamers, visionaries. They imagined order in chaos, patterns in the wilderness, meaning in the unknown. The circles of stone were their declaration to the universe, that even in the wild, even in the emptiness, humans could reach for something higher. They sought connection with each other, with nature, with the heavens above. They raised stones that would outlive them, messages that would speak across millennia. Even today, standing on that hill, it is possible to feel the quiet power of their work. The stones do not shout, they do not demand attention, yet they endure, whispering of devotion, of wonder, of a species awakening to itself. They ask us to remember that civilization did not begin with empires and writing, but with imagination, with ritual, with the courage to build something that mattered beyond survival. Göbekli Tepe remains a mystery. Its builders are unknown. Their rituals are lost. Their stories, except for what is carved in limestone, are silent. And yet, in their silence, they left humanity its first cathedral, its first dream of eternity, and the quiet reminder that even before history, humans sought to touch the divine. The sun rises over Göbekli Tepe, casting long shadows from the massive stone pillars across the plains. Each one stands like a silent guardian, a sentinel from a time before history. Look closely, and you see them. Foxes crouching, alert, snakes twisting along the surfaces, cranes stretching their wings, vultures perched as if watching over the circle. Every creature tells a story, though the meaning is lost to us. The animals were more than decoration. They were symbols, perhaps guardians of sacred spaces, messengers between humans and the unseen. Some scholars believe they represent forces of life and death, or the cycles of nature, or the spirits that watched over the plains. And the T-shaped pillars themselves, some taller than a man, carved with arms raised with circles and hooks, could represent gods, ancestors, or perhaps humanity reaching upward toward understanding, toward eternity. Imagine the builders lifting these stones. No wheels, no metal, only ropes, levers, and countless hands. Their bodies bruised, their muscles aching, yet their minds focused on creation. They built not for trade, not for comfort, not for survival alone. They built for meaning. They gathered, they labored, they imagined. Some pillars hint at ritual. Arms raised, perhaps in prayer or celebration. Animals as spiritual symbols, guardians of the sacred. Fires would have burned at night, their smoke rising to meet the stars. Voices would have echoed, chants carried across the plains, merging with the wind. Humans seeking connection with something larger than themselves. A community united not by necessity alone, but by wonder. Göbekli Tepe challenges our assumptions. Religion, ritual, and worship are not the products of kings and cities. They were born here among wandering hunter-gatherers who carved meaning into stone before writing or civilization as we know it. They sought understanding of life, of the heavens, of forces they could not name. And in their circles of stone, they found a way to reach beyond themselves. Imagine the gatherings, families, clans, strangers brought together by shared vision. Perhaps they danced, sang, or stood in silent reverence. Perhaps they watched the stars and mapped the heavens in their minds. The carvings hint at knowledge lost to us. Vultures, symbols of death and renewal. Snakes, symbols of transformation and infinity. Boars, symbols of strength. Each chosen with intention, each echoing a worldview we can only glimpse. As you listen, picture the silent pillars rising above you. Feel the torchlight flicker on rough faces. Hear the faint hum of voices long gone. The stones stand eternal, testaments to the first human attempts at connection, at ritual, at understanding the world beyond mere survival. They built temples not of grandeur, but of devotion, reaching for the divine through imagination and effort. This was not a city, nor a palace, nor a kingdom. It was a place where humans first sought to touch the eternal, where stone and spirit merged, where labor became devotion, where wonder became ritual. The builders left no written words, no sign monuments. Their message survives only in carved stone, eternal and silent. And still, it speaks, inviting us to see, to feel, to imagine, and to dream, as they once did. Göbekli Tepe was not meant to last forever. Around 8,000 BC, long after its pillars had been raised, the builders did something extraordinary. They buried it, stone by stone, circle by circle, layer by layer. They covered their sacred place with earth. It was not destruction. It was preservation, a deliberate act, a closing of a chapter in human history that began with dreams, with stone, with fire, and ended quietly beneath the soil. Why would they bury it? Was it reverence, fear, or a desire to protect their work from the unknown? Perhaps all three. The burial itself became a ritual, the final act of devotion, the end of an era where humans first reached beyond survival into imagination and worship. Imagine standing on that hill 12,000 years ago. The last torchlight fades, hands weary from carving and lifting heavy stone, faces tired but calm. Perhaps they sang, perhaps they whispered prayers, perhaps they simply watched the stars. Slowly, they shovel earth over the circles, hiding the pillars, the carvings, the symbols of their devotion. And with that act, they disappeared from history, not as kings, not as conquerors, but as humans who dreamed, built, and preserved their wonder for a distant future. Göbekli Tepe remained buried for thousands of years. Empires rose along the Tigris and Euphrates. Writing was invented. Cities flourished. Kingdoms conquered each other. And through it all, the hill slept. Its builders vanished from memory, but the echo of their imagination endured, waiting for someone to awaken the stones. When modern archaeologists uncovered the site, they found circles of stone perfectly preserved, carvings as sharp as if made yesterday, and a mystery older than history itself. Each pillar tells a story of belief, of effort, of a species beginning to reach beyond survival, seeking meaning in the void. Göbekli Tepe reminds us that civilization is not only built with food, walls, or coins. It begins in the mind, in imagination, in the desire to reach the eternal. Long before pyramids, before empires, before written law, humans carved their dreams into stone. They sought connection with each other, with the natural world, with the cosmos, and left behind a message that speaks across millennia. As you listen, imagine the silence of the buried hill. The weight of history presses softly, like a blanket over the shoulders of time. The hands that shaped the stones, the hearts that dreamed beyond survival, the quiet earth holding their legacy. This was the first cathedral, the first dream of eternity, and it survives to remind us of what humans can imagine, even before history began. Long before cities rose along the rivers, before walls and roads divided kingdoms, humans lived close to the land. They hunted, they gathered, they wandered, and yet, among them, some chose to stay. Some chose to return again and again to the hill we now call Göbekli Tepe. Here, amid the wild plains, they built stone, not for shelter, but for meaning. Imagine their days. The sun rising over the horizon, painting the earth with gold. Families stirring, children following their parents across rocky ground. Hunters carrying spears, scouts moving silently among herds of gazelle. Women collecting roots, grains, and fruits, their hands familiar with the gifts of the land. Life was simple, yet each day carried the weight of survival and the spark of imagination. In the evenings, they gathered at the hill. Fires flickered, shadows stretching across massive T-shaped pillars. They shared food, shared stories, and carved symbols into stone. The carvings, snakes, boars, vultures, foxes, were more than decoration. They were reminders of the world around them, representations of forces they could neither control nor fully understand. Perhaps they were spirits, guardians, messengers. Perhaps they were simply ways to mark the passage of time, to honor the cycles of life and death. The work of lifting and shaping the pillars required coordination, planning, and community. It was not a task for one person. It demanded many hands, minds working together, and hearts that believed in the unseen. And yet, these people were not slaves to labor. They labored willingly, with purpose, united in devotion. Each stone placed was a testament to collective vision, each carving a prayer or a story, each circle a sanctuary of thought. Even their meals were infused with ritual. The hunters brought meat, the gatherers brought seeds and grains. Perhaps they celebrated seasonal changes with feasts, acknowledging the earth that sustained them. Perhaps they danced, sang, or chanted in unison, their voices echoing across the plains, carried by the wind to the stars above. Through these gatherings, bonds formed, ideas passed, and culture began to take shape. Silent, subtle, yet enduring. They may have told stories by firelight. Stories of hunts, of seasons, of animals, of stars. Stories that taught lessons, shared warnings, and inspired wonder. Stories that, like the stones themselves, would echo through time, waiting to be remembered. Life at Göbekli Tepe was not ordinary. It was labor intertwined with devotion, survival intertwined with imagination, work intertwined with the divine. They lived on the edge of the wild, and yet reached for something eternal. Each day was a balance between necessity and aspiration, between what the world demanded and what the human spirit dreamed. And when night fell, they lay under the stars, gazing at constellations that would guide them for centuries to come. The animals of their carvings mirrored those that roamed the plains, creating a reflection of life in stone. The pillars, the circles, the carvings, they were their message to the universe. We exist, we observe, we imagine, we reach. Long before calendars, long before written time, humans looked to the heavens. The stars were not just distant lights. They were guides, markers, and companions. Above Göbekli Tepe, the night sky stretched endlessly, dark and unbroken by city lights. It was here that the first builders turned their gaze upward, searching for meaning, direction, and connection. The arrangement of the pillars suggests more than artistry. Some circles appear aligned with the movements of the sun and moon. Perhaps they marked solstices, the changing of seasons, the migration of animals. Perhaps they were early attempts at understanding the cosmos, mapping the heavens in stone. The T-shaped pillars may represent humans reaching upward, arms raised toward the infinite sky, seeking answers they could not yet speak. Imagine the builders at night, firelight dancing across carved stone. Their eyes trace the stars, noting constellations that will endure for millennia. They mark the paths of the sun, follow the moon's gentle arc, and wonder at the patterns that emerge. The carvings of birds, snakes, and foxes may mirror these celestial observations, connecting earth to sky, life to cosmos, flesh to stone. These stargazers were not astronomers as we know them. They were dreamers, observers, and seekers. Their knowledge was practical, yet sacred. By following the stars, they knew when herds would move, when the rains might come, when to gather plants or hunt. By carving their knowledge into stone, they preserved it for generations who might come after them, even if those generations would forget the meaning. Night was also a time of reflection and ritual. They may have chanted, danced, or remained silent in awe. The pillars, the animals, the circles, each became a mirror of the universe, a sacred space where earth and sky, human and divine, could meet. It was a language without words, a message that still reaches us today. Through these alignments, the builders of Göbekli Tepe created more than a temple. They created a map of human curiosity, a reflection of our desire to understand the world around us. The stones became instruments of observation, devotion, and memory. Each pillar, each carving, each carefully placed circle was a testament to minds reaching beyond the ordinary, seeking connection to something eternal. And as they gazed at the stars, they may have wondered about their place in the universe. Who watches over us? What forces guide our lives? What comes after death? In the quiet of the plains, under an untouched sky, they sought answers through stone, through ritual, through devotion. They reached outward and upward, and in doing so, left us a vision of humanity's first encounter with the infinite. Göbekli Tepe is not just a monument of the past. It is a reminder of the eternal questions humans ask, the mysteries we chase, and the way wonder can shape our lives. The stars above continue to shine, unchanging, silent witnesses to the builders who first turned their eyes to the heavens and carved their awe into stone. The carvings at Göbekli Tepe are silent, yet they speak across millennia. Animals, abstract shapes, and human-like forms appear over and over, each carefully etched into limestone. Snakes coil and twist. Boars stand firm, full of strength. Foxes crouch, watchful, and vultures loom as guardians of the unseen. The meaning of these symbols is lost to us, yet their purpose is clear. They were sacred, deliberate, and powerful. These symbols were more than decoration. They were tools of ritual, reminders of forces that could not be controlled but could be honored. Perhaps they represented spirits that guided the people, animals that provided sustenance, or cosmic forces that shaped the seasons. Perhaps they were warnings, prayers, or ways of remembering the past. Every carving, every circle was part of a language of devotion that required no words, yet communicated everything. The T-shaped pillars may represent humans themselves, arms raised in reverence or supplication. Together, they formed circles, gathering points where the community could come together, not only to build but to celebrate, reflect, and worship. Life and ritual were intertwined. Labor itself became devotion. Every lifted stone, every carved figure, was an offering, a testament to their shared understanding of the sacred. We do not know the exact practices of the builders. They may have danced in the circles, chanted over the stones, or observed silent ceremonies beneath the stars. Perhaps certain animals were honored for specific reasons. Snakes for renewal, vultures for transition, boars for courage. Perhaps each symbol had a season, a day, or a celestial alignment, a rhythm tied to the natural and cosmic world. The repetition of symbols hints at memory, at teaching, at the passing of knowledge. By carving the same forms repeatedly, the builders ensured that their wisdom would survive, even if the story behind it was forgotten. The circles became classrooms, cathedrals, and libraries of thought, etched into stone, open to those who could see, to those who could understand. The rituals at Göbekli Tepe may have been private or communal, loud or silent, simple or elaborate. But the intent was universal, to connect, to honor, and to understand. The carvings were invitations, the pillars were guides, and the circles were sacred stages where humans reach for the divine, for comprehension, for eternity. Even today, standing among these stones, we feel the weight of their rituals. The silent power of symbols carved with intention transcends time. It reminds us that the human spirit has always sought to understand, to honor, to create meaning. From hunter-gatherers lifting stones to dream of gods, to us listening millennia later, the thread of curiosity and devotion continues unbroken. Göbekli Tepe teaches us that ritual is more than ceremony. It is expression, imagination, and connection. It is the first way humans reached beyond the immediate, beyond survival, beyond the known. It is the whisper of minds awakening to the eternal, etched in stone, waiting for us to listen. Göbekli Tepe was buried, forgotten, and yet its legacy echoes through history. Though the people who built it vanished, their vision endured in ways that are almost invisible, yet undeniable. The idea that humans could come together, lift massive stones, and carve meaning into the world survived. It would ripple forward into the cities, temples, and civilizations that followed. Long after the hill slept beneath layers of earth, the lessons of Göbekli Tepe persisted. It showed that spirituality and ritual can emerge before writing, before kings, before organized society. It proved that humans could dream, cooperate, and create purpose beyond survival. Every later temple, every monumental circle, every sacred site carries the echo of this first cathedral of stone. The builder's knowledge, embedded in alignment and carving, hints at early understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and ritual structure. While later civilizations refined and codified these ideas, Göbekli Tepe represents the seed, the first spark of human civilization reaching toward comprehension, toward the divine, toward eternity. Its influence may be subtle, hidden beneath the accomplishments of Egypt, Sumer, and Mesopotamia, but it is profound. The impulse to gather, to carve, to align stone with the heavens, to create communal sacred spaces, these are threads of continuity. In every city that rises, every temple that reaches skyward, every monument that honors the unseen, we hear the faint whisper of those first builders. Göbekli Tepe reminds us of human potential. Even without writing, kings, or complex agriculture, people were capable of vision, dedication, and wonder. They organized, they planned, they cooperated. They created something meant to last beyond their lifetimes, beyond their knowledge, beyond their memory. And in doing so, they set the stage for everything that would follow. Today we excavate, study, and marvel. But the true legacy is not only in the stones. It is in the realization that humanity's first steps toward civilization were driven not only by need, but by imagination, by faith, by ritual, by the desire to reach for something eternal. Göbekli Tepe is a reminder that creation begins in the mind, and the mind can shape worlds even before history begins. And as we study these silent stones, we are invited to reflect. What do we leave behind? What will endure? The builders of Göbekli Tepe left their questions carved in limestone, and those questions still echo, waiting for us to answer, waiting for us to dream. Time moves differently at Göbekli Tepe. Millennia have passed, yet the stones remain, silent, patient, enduring. They whisper stories of hands that carved, of hearts that dreamed, of humans who first reached beyond survival into imagination, devotion, and wonder. Consider the builders. Hunter-gatherers with no writing, no cities, no metal, yet they created something monumental, something that continues to speak across 12,000 years. They were ordinary in many ways, yet extraordinary in vision. They lifted stones heavier than themselves, carved symbols of the unknown, arranged circles that harmonized with the cosmos. They touched eternity in the simplest of acts, creation. And we, in our modern age, stand in awe. We study, we measure, we theorize. But perhaps the most important lesson is not in knowledge alone. It is in connection. The builders reached for the divine without understanding, without certainty, yet with courage and devotion. They remind us that human imagination is timeless, that wonder is eternal, and that devotion need not be written to endure. Göbekli Tepe is also a mirror. It asks us to reflect on our own lives, our own creations. What do we build? What do we leave behind? The stones, carved with care, endure long after the people who raised them have vanished. They remind us that even the smallest acts of vision, devotion, and imagination may ripple across time, waiting to be discovered, remembered, and honored. Imagine walking among the pillars today. Feel the weight of history, the energy of labor, the echo of ancient gatherings. Sense the quiet power of human endeavor reaching for the unknown. See the carvings as prayers, as stories, as whispers of the first cathedral of imagination and spirit. The wind across the plains carries them still, soft but persistent, connecting the past to the present, the ancient builders to us. Göbekli Tepe teaches patience, humility, and wonder. It reminds us that even before history, humans were capable of extraordinary vision, that devotion, imagination, and ritual can shape a legacy, that the world is full of mysteries waiting for eyes to see, hearts to feel, and minds to understand. And so, as you drift further into thought, into sleep, into reflection, listen to the whispers through time. Listen to the voices of the unknown builders, calling across millennia. They dreamed, they reached, they created. And in their creation, they became eternal. Göbekli Tepe is more than stone. It is memory, it is intention, it is humanity reaching into the void. Long before cities, before empires, before the written word, people imagined permanence. They shaped it with their hands, lifted it with their strength, and carved it with devotion. Every pillar, every circle, every carving is a testament to their desire to endure. Walk among the circles in your mind. Imagine the weight of the stones, the labor it took to move them, and the minds that guided each placement. Each carving is deliberate. Each symbol carries meaning, even if we no longer know it. Snakes, boars, vultures, foxes, guardians of the sacred, mirrors of the cosmos, reminders of mortality, symbols of life. They are echoes of minds reaching for understanding, voices from a time when humans first sought to touch something eternal. The builders understood rhythm. They organized, planned, and labored together. Their work was not hurried. It was careful, purposeful. It was a meditation in stone, a ritual of labor and devotion. In lifting each pillar, in carving each symbol, they reached outward and upward, and in doing so, created a dialogue that would last thousands of years. A dialogue not of words, but of presence, of intention, of humanity at its most reflective. Even today, we feel their echo. The site hums with a quiet power, a resonance that does not fade. It asks questions we cannot fully answer. Why do humans seek to create? Why do we carve, build, and honor? Why do we reach for permanence in a world defined by impermanence? Göbekli Tepe does not answer. It invites. It whispers. It reminds us that our search for meaning is ancient, continuous, and unbroken. Consider the builders once more. Ordinary humans, yet capable of extraordinary vision. They observed the sky, studied the animals, understood cycles they could not name. They built not for profit, not for power, not for fame, but for devotion, for wonder, for connection. And in doing so, they laid the foundations of what it means to be human, to reach beyond ourselves, to create, to imagine, to endure. The echoes of Göbekli Tepe travel through time. They speak to every human who has wondered, who has built, who has dreamed. They remind us that imagination and devotion are eternal, that the desire to touch the unseen is universal, that the legacy of humans is not only in cities and inventions, but in the quiet, persistent pursuit of meaning. Listen to the echoes now. Feel the weight of human intention across millennia. Sense the connection to those unknown builders. In their stone, we see ourselves. In their devotion, we find guidance. In their dreams, we glimpse eternity. Göbekli Tepe sleeps beneath the plain, yet it is alive in its silence. The stones remain, unchanged by time, yet full of story. They are the final voice of a people whose names are lost, whose faces are gone, but whose imagination endures. They remind us that humanity began not with empires or laws, but with wonder, devotion, and the desire to reach beyond the ordinary. The builders created without expectation. They carved symbols whose meanings we may never fully understand. They raised pillars heavier than themselves, arranged circles with intention, aligned their stones with the movements of the heavens. All this without the conveniences of civilization, without kings, without written word. Yet they left a legacy that transcends time, a testament to human imagination and spirit. Time passed. Their knowledge was buried, their stories forgotten. Yet the pillars endure. Each one is a silent teacher, reminding us that even the smallest acts of purpose, devotion, and creativity may ripple across millennia. They ask us to reflect. What will we leave behind? How will our own actions echo in the future? Göbekli Tepe is more than archaeology. It is philosophy, meditation, and memory carved in stone. Stand in thought among the pillars. Feel the labor of thousands of hands. Sense the intention in every curve, every symbol, every placement. Imagine the gatherings of people, their songs, their chants, their prayers. The site was more than stone. It was humanity reaching toward eternity, a place where ordinary lives touched the infinite. Even now, the silence teaches. It teaches patience, devotion, imagination. It teaches that creation does not need recognition, that meaning can exist before history, that wonder is timeless. The hill sleeps, yet it speaks, and in its whispers, we find a connection across 12,000 years. We hear the builders' dreams, and in listening, we continue their story. Göbekli Tepe reminds us that human potential is ancient, resilient, and enduring. It asks us to dream, to create, to seek, and to imagine. The stones remain eternal, and in them, the voices of the first dreamers continue to call, whispering across the plains, across time, into our own lives. They dreamed, they built, they reached for eternity, and so can we.